Welcome to Convo Fango. Today we are taking you to the depths of hell, chatting HELLRAISER with director David Bruckner and composer Ben Lovett. Yay! Thank you guys for joining us.
Of course.
So I don't know when this is
thanks for having me.
airing, but by this time you've both gotten to watch this with audiences, right? We had Fantastic Fest, and were you both at Beyond Fest as well?
Yeah.
Yep.
Last night. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
How did that feel, just like watching it with the audience?
It was amazing. It's also a genre audience, so they understand HELLRAISER. They love HELLRAISER. They get all the references, and it was a rowdy bunch. So the stuff that we thought like, oh, this is kind of an in joke. This is going to go right under the surface. It's like big reaction in the room for that stuff, and there were some cheer moments which we were very grateful for. It was a good night.
Nice. Ben, how do you feel about it?
I mean, it's always such a pleasure. You learn a lot of things about the movie when you get a chance to sit in an audience like that. You're always surprised at like, oh, you guys laughed at that? Like, we always thought that was funny, but we didn't realize that was going to get like a broad, widespread laugh, 2 or 3 times in a row. So little things like that, what people react to. You learn little things like when people do react to a certain thing, oh, they're laughing over the next little bit of, so there's all these just kind of things that you learn that you can't really know until you sit in a theater and watch it. And there's that other thing, which is that kind of intangible aspect of watching a film with a lot of people who have never seen it, and it's one of the only opportunities you have to see it as one whole thing, instead of the way that we live with it, most of it, which is just the assembly of all the little pieces that we're working on.
Right.
So it's a gift, really, to be able to kind of see it through the perspective of an audience.
Awesome. I love that it's been a fun experience for you guys so far. I feel like watching it with the genre audience is both a gift and also terrifying, because it's like you're with horror fans, but this is like a franchise. So you're going with people who like are very deeply invested in HELLRAISER and like the brand and the characters. So watching it with those people, there's going to be your harshest critics, but also the people that like get it. They get the references, they get the jokes. So I love that it's just been like cheers and rowdiness throughout. That's awesome.
Yeah, we just would encourage everyone to invite all their friends over at home when it comes out on Hulu. Like, make sure there's a 6-person minimum.
Yeah.
And then secret trick last night, because I was talking to the guy that owned the theater, the Arrow, in the back, and we were kind of chit-chatting as the movie was playing, and he was like, what do you think? You want to turn it up? And I was like, yeah, turn it up. So we got to crank it a little bit because the room was packed, so they absorbed the sound. So lessons learned, it's better loud. Find the line, and yeah, it was good and rowdy.
Nice. Okay, so assemble your HELLRAISER 6 groups when that's on Hulu. Get your HELLRAISER 6 together, and you got to crank it up. Yeah.
HELLRAISER 6.
The HELLRAISER 6.
I would add, not to go ahead and fast forward to plugs, but I would say the same applies to the album. Soundtrack comes out Friday. Please enjoy loudly.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah.
So this is not your first time collaborating. You guys also did The Night House, The Ritual, and now HELLRAISER. So I guess it's not going very well. But
Still kind of trying to find that was Night House, Ritual, and a lot of stuff that no one ever will or should see.
Yeah.
Prior to all of that.
Ben and I go back to college, right? Like 21, 22 or something like that.
Well, okay. How many projects have you guys worked on together?
It depends on what how many of them count?
All of them. They all count.
Bunch of short films.
Videos, experimental art stuff.
I made some music videos for one of Ben's albums. And then our first movie that got out there, which was The Signal, which was this kind of anthological triptych. Ben composed that as well. And then there were a few years where I was trying to get him and I couldn't get a hold of him because he was doing important things. And then I found him and I dragged him back into the fray for The Ritual. And so now we're 3 and counting features.
Nice. Yeah. Just Ben, please return my call. I have another feature for you.
I'm going to apologize in advance. It's going to kick our asses, but let's go for it. Yeah.
I love that. So when you're doing something like this, Ben, I'm wondering, obviously, like we talked about, it's a franchise. It's a famous franchise. How much does like the work like how much does Christopher Young's original score inform what you're doing here? Like, that has to be on your mind? Are you trying to veer as far away from that as possible? Are you letting it inform and kind of like incorporate elements of that? Like, what is the process behind that?
Well, I mean, it kind of goes without saying to anybody that's probably watching and sort of knows like how iconic and beloved those scores are. And I, like I've said before, I think it's one of the most famous pieces of music in the genre. And so there's no such thing as kidding yourself that it doesn't have influence on you. Even if you're actively trying to do something different, it's having influence on you. And so we really went into this, you know, having the conversation of sort of, you know, how much do we allow ourselves to explore and reinvent? How much do we try to emulate everything that we've seen done before? Knowing that the answer is probably some relationship of those two things, and kind of finding our way into the right relationship between those two forces. And I think that something that David identified really early was not only that Hellraiser is a very musical franchise, but that with so many things, you know, in terms of the visuals and mythology, so many things being reinterpreted and things that are fundamentally identifiable with what people think of as Hellraiser changing, being reinvented, that the music was an area that we could still really make it feel like Hellraiser. And to me, that's really a testament to Mr. Young's scores and how much that music is part of what defines the identity of what those original films are. So we totally went into it with the intention to channel the spirit and try to capture the characteristics and kind of the way, the type of music that he wrote and put to those images in 1987, which I think was very inventive and very much like putting this kind of lyrical, romantic, classical writing with these very coarse images was something no one had ever really seen or done. And could we kind of go into that, but then somewhere along that path, could we find a way to also bring like a new sound into it? It was the spirit of reinvention of the whole project, right, with that. And so could we extend that to the music and try to find a way that was something that could be, you know, familiar and different, but also, you know, new and fresh.
I love that. And we kind of talked about that a bit, David, at Fantastic Fest. Like, this is very much, everything about this movie feels very much like it's like the building blocks that Barker gave you, and then you're just assembling something new with it. But it's still very much informed by that original work. It has the spirit of it, but it's an entirely new beast, but it has so many elements. So it's like, you can tell you're using those tools, but you're just using them in a different way, which is such a cool thing to have that as a through line throughout to keep that vibe. And I think that's a really hard thing to do, but you guys nailed it.
So some of it's just to, you know, we want to play too. Like,
Yeah.
the world has been created. And so, you know, you have to reckon with what came before. And I think any aspect of it, whether it be visual design or a melody, a piece of music, is you run right into, the more you study it, you run right into like, my God, this was fantastic. And it works for so many different reasons. And so I think, speaking for myself, it takes a little guts to go, okay, great. So we're going to reference this, but then what would we come up with that would be an adjacent extension of this? And how far do we run with it? So we have to kind of let our passions run amok to some degree, but it always kind of circles back around to, you know, the path that they had laid before. And I hope we struck the right balance, you know.
I think it's respecting what comes before, but riffing on it, which I think is like the best way to honor something, you know?
That was something also about a great deal, is like, this is because you go back and you look at something, you have a lot of reverence for it. You go, well, how do I express that reverence? And the conscious decision is like, well, you don't do it by copying it. You do it by ingesting it, thinking about it, feeling it, and then looking at the story that we're telling and going, okay, how does all of this fit into where we're going necessarily? And just following inspirations and just trusting that that's not only part of the creative process, but it's something that that we hope the fans will get and appreciate at the same time.
Yeah. I was just going to add that, like, something that when David was saying that occurred to me was, you know, whenever we start a new project with David or with any director, for me, it's like there's a process of figuring out what the sonic identity
Mhm.
of the film is, trying to figure out like, what does this movie sound like? What kind of music and what kind of score and instrumentation are we going to do? And so there's a huge assist with this because those early Christopher Young scores are sort of a roadmap that's already there to sort of understand the landscape of how these films operate and where all you can go with it. You know, it's like, I have those scores to thank for creating such immense boundaries on what you can get away with. Like, there's no such thing as too much in a Hellraiser score. You know, it's all about excess and pushing limits and boundaries. And so that was sort of, that came in as part of the deal. And while that it's kind of both inspiring and intimidating at the same time, at least it's information, it's data, it's stuff, it's something to start from.
Right. Sometimes there is such a thing as that paradox of choice, right? Where it's like, if you have no boundaries and you don't have any kind of fence to like guide you of where you stay in, it's like, well, okay, what do I do? But then at least if you have like, oh, you built me like this little fence and I have this meadow that I could frolic in, but it's within these parameters. Sometimes that's easier to start off with.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your guys' collaboration process. Like, what is your language when you're deciding the sound of something? Like, David, are you talking about like feelings, or are you like, I want it to sound like da da da, like, you know, like, how is it, like, what are those conversations like?
I don't have a musical acumen at all, so like, it is my guide in every way imaginable. But I think it always starts with stories. So typically, I mean, Ben came on pretty early on this and The Night House, but to some degree or another, I'm kind of down the path a little bit with the script, with the project. And Ben comes in and first and foremost is just, you know, my friend and a storyteller and somebody that can add perspective to the whole situation and oftentimes bring me back to why it is we're doing this, or what is the purpose of this thing. And especially once a cut is on the table, it's like, is any of this reading? And then what is the story that we're telling moment to moment? So Ben asks a lot of questions, and oftentimes we end up, like, a really sweet place that we end up is you know, understanding that there's different narratives moving through the film at the same time. There's different themes at work, and identifying what are going to be those through lines, whose moment it is, and what story we're telling in a particular moment. You know, is Riley playing with the box a foreboding beat, or do we play the temptation? Is it the perspective of Riley where this is a delicacy to be enjoyed? And do we hope the audience will get the dread just in context? And so are we adding beauty and reverence to this moment, or are we're putting a ticking clock on, you know, the untold doom that lay ahead? And so those are the really fun conversations that we get into it, where Ben has the power to completely guide your focus, you know, moment to the next.
And I would just add to that to say that what David said about our conversations are always about story. And most of the time we're talking about music, we're talking about emotions, we're talking about feelings, and we're talking about narrative arcs of characters, never really specific instrumentation or a specific key or any kind of like concrete musical things, because all of those are just kind of means to an end anyway. The most important thing is like, do we understand the journey of this character and where they're at any given point? And something that's been part of these features has been, we talk a lot about that from the script, when all we have both is a common reference point of the script. So before he's gone off sort of to war, and then he goes off to fight the battle of production, and I start building weapons because there's a separate battle to fight when he comes home bludgeoned and beaten from the war of production. And so his perspective on the process has sort of been shaped and colored by what you see and endure and go through in the war of production and on set and then into the edit. Whereas I've stayed kind of rooted in just like the narrative story journey and try to maintain all that perspective and what was important and where our focus was in the beginning, so that we can try to help get back to that, what always seemed most clear at the beginning of where our focus should be.
That is a fantastic analogy. So what does like feedback sound like to you, Ben? Like, if you're like working on a piece and you show it to David, does it come back and say like, maybe less doom, more romance? Like, is that like the kind of language that you guys use for
Well,
that?
a specific one that came up a lot in Hellraiser was, he'd say, "It's very pretty. Can dump some slime on it? He'd say, can you just like, I really like it. Can you just like rub it around in the dirt? And I can put some slime on it. Yeah, we can slime it. And I'm not precious about these things either. So it's sort of like, that's the fun of collaborating with filmmakers to me, because I write music and collaborate with other musicians. That's a very different kind of thing than when I collaborate with a director or writer and make a piece of music. So when I'm getting these sort of abstract instructions and strings of adjectives and things like that, which there was a lot of in Ritual. It was just like strings of adjectives, a lot of that in Night House, just sort of like describing something in a very Bruckner way that I would kind of go, okay, I think I know what it is. I think I know what it likes. And part of that is the kind of instinct that develops over 20 something years of just knowing the musical tastes of a friend of yours,
It's great because working, in so many aspects of the filmmaking process, the director, the job is to communicate ideas, collaborative art form. So depending on who you're talking to, you have to frame it in a certain way. Every actor's different, for instance, but there's a language that is agreed upon oftentimes, discussing scene work. And for a lot of that, you have to, in various disciplines of filmmaking, you have to put on a kind of posture or there's this kind of standard approach. And one of the things that's great about working with Ben and knowing him so long and us being such good friends is that I don't have to do any of that. Like I can just be as abstract and I can be trying stuff out just on the tip of my tongue, not even knowing really what I'm getting at, that will get into weird, real personalized conversation about what we're working on, which usually doubles back into the inevitable, like, why do we do this? And where are we at with this one? And then which is great because you kind of find your way back to the purpose of it, and in some way or another. And I think Ben and I always end up in a place, or thus far, where we're finding something sincere about what we're doing and about what the characters are experiencing that we relate to. And so it's fun to sort of to be untethered in that conversation and to be able to find it.
So at this point, you definitely speak Ben and you definitely speak Bruckner. And it's one of those things that's like that unspoken thing between best friends where you're trying to describe something and there's no words, just sounds coming out, but somehow they know exactly what you're saying.
You have no idea how accurate of a statement that is. You want to tell her the thing?
Tell me the thing.
What was it? Was it Ritual? Which one was the thing? When David had the joke of like, he keeps getting these jobs because he just goes into the producer's office and goes, "Don't worry, guys, I speak Bruckner."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Thank God,
they're like,
somebody around to translate."
Keeps talking in circles about dream logic. I have no idea. Yeah.
They're like, "Don't worry, I know what he means."
Can somebody please translate what this guy is saying? You're like, don't even worry about it. I'm on it. Amazing. Do you guys each have a favorite track if you had to choose one?
Ooh. It's impossible to. I'm gonna divide it.
Scene or area. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in two categories. And Ben, you're just now naming the album tracks, so I don't.
So I bet he doesn't know the album track names.
Okay.
You titled everything, so I don't know what you ended up finally calling it. So I'm going to give it my own titles here. But I'm going to divide it into two categories. On one hand, of the recreations of the Young themes, I love what we call the Cenobite theme and the Cenobite March. Ben took something that was traditionally this very, very bold kind of fanfare. The Cenobites would show up and you get bum, 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 bum. And it was such a pronouncement at their arrival. And we had been down this path where the Cenobites we really wanted to bring, of the demons to some, angels to others conversation. We wanted to bring the angelic to the surface in a way that people could identify, and that there would be tension between the beauty and the abhorrent when you're looking at them. And so we found that the images alone could really go either way, depending on who was looking at it. Some people would be like, gosh, Pinhead, she's gorgeous. And the next person would be like, that's the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. It really just depends on how you're taking in the body modification. And so the music needed to kind of indicate our intentions to some degree. And so Ben took that theme and built something out of it that in pure chorus that is very eerie. And so it's this, it just kind of rolls in and snakes around in the background in a lot of the Pinhead scenes. And because of the way, and Ben, I'm sure you can describe this much better than me, but my experience of it is that because the chorus is, there's an unwieldiness to it. Like it's, you kind of don't know when it's going to dip into the theme and when it's not. You're not as conscious of the fact that you're hearing it, but you find your way into it. And I felt like you found a really great harmony with Jamie's performance in that moment. And because it's sort of what she's playing on reserve, is this kind of sensual curiosity with her subjects, where she's maneuvering and she's testing them in strange ways, and you get the sense that she enjoys seeing their responses. And so I kind of feel like you two are in a really incredible dance there. And then the second category, which I'll keep brief, is just of the new themes that Ben created, which feel very, very Hellraiser. And there are several of them. I'm really partial to Riley's Temptation, and it's got two parts to it, and one of it is a calling to the box, is a calling to sensation and experience, whatever it may be, and another, I think, has the kind of back half of it just, for me, exudes a compassion for her plight and how restless she is as a soul, and how much she needs or wants or needs to release herself from kind of the burden of being. And that's what desire allows her to do in some ways. So those are my two favorite melodies.
I think I can just to go off of that and just go deeper into what you're saying on those two, would just simply be on the Riley thing was, and really in both of those cases, they're good examples of where, as a composer, I have the benefit of everybody else's hard work already on the screen to help draw inspiration from, even when I've already started writing and I have all these other great, it's where I tend to come in the process that I get to benefit from the characters and from the direction, from the camera and from the lighting and from the production design. And you can absorb all of these things for inspiration. And with determining how and where we were going to deviate from a sort of traditional orchestral sound that was established in the Chris Young scores, an inroad to that was Riley, and the way the age of the characters, the way they dress, how they live, just the attitude, just something about how they're cast and directed and photographed said to me, we need one connection to that world, which for Riley, it's the harp. There's a harp that follows her around throughout the story, she and Trevor, and it's kind of part of that relationship. But there's also, she's mostly designed in synths and soundscapes and keyboards that aren't acoustic and aren't pianos. She has more of a modern feel. And with The Priest, it was me really drawing from Jamie's performance. Because like Bruckner mentioned, the Cenobite theme, which was this, trust me, we recorded a big, bold brass version of that, very much like the original, and it just doesn't really work. When you throw it, it's just a different character, That's Doug Bradley, like that's a different version of it. And for Jamie, I think it was, trying to articulate something that I think she's giving us, that I think the camera suggests, and is inherent in how she's delivering the character, but it's not something you can photograph or deliver as dialogue. It's something she's putting across that you can best accentuate with music in the way that we understand stories and emotions. And so it's just this like presence and this sort of divinity that she embodies. And it's sinister and it's intimidating in all of its powerful reserve. And there's something about that just felt so sinister and subtle. And it was sort of like, could we make this big brass fanfare kind of a bit more intimidating in sort of a snake? Is it an elephant that's going to stomp you, or if it's going to snake that's going to snake up and bite you,
I love that you guys mentioned that, because there is the divinity of it, but there's like that gentleness to it as well. But it's not what strikes me as like a warm or inviting gentleness. It's a gentleness that like scared the shit out of me. Like it was a gentleness that is like, I can approach this gently because I am so fucking powerful that I don't have to chase you down. Like her movements are so soft and controlled, and she's like when just standing there at times, and that's terrifying. And then when they do walk, it's like so slow because it's like we don't need to chase you down, we're gonna get you, it's inevitable. So like all of that with
forever.
them, yes, exactly. So with that score underlying like all of it, it's like it's that thing of pretty but grimy and disgusting and slimed up as well, but that it scared the absolute crap out of me. But it was just that like that reserved gentleness, that angelic divinity, but sinister. And I just found it terrifying for that reason.
I think it's going off is I think it's that angels to others, it's that sense of like, they're not inherently evil. Just their idea of a good time might be something you don't really want, might be more than you bargained for.
We're just giving you what you asked for. That's basically, yeah.
Just cannot be given. Yeah. That's the other line that came up a lot when the job got hard.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you guys would like to share before we go? Anything you want people to know? Tell us when that album comes out again. What's the actual date?
Comes out Friday.
Okay.
On what is Friday? The 7th? Yeah.
Friday the
Which
7th.
I'm guessing may exist by the time people watch this. So,
yes. Okay, cool.
It's out now at your favorite digital retailer.
Hey. So by the time you watch this, you can watch HELLRAISER on Hulu, and you can get that album at your favorite digital retailer. Get that?
Stream it everywhere you stream music.
There you go. And then this is like the infomercial version where like the tracks now like you're going like up on the screen. Little text crawl happening.
Well, and I hope all I can say about the album is that like it's more than, and this is true about the other albums for the films that David and I've done, and I try to do whenever I do it, is it's more than the scenes on a playlist. It's a re-edited, remixed, recontextualized presentation of the idea of the movie as an album. And so it's a different listening experience. It's not a strict chronology. They're not edited exactly the same way they are in the scenes. It's meant to kind of give you a different way to engage with the ideas in the story. So for people who like the movie or don't, give that a spin. Maybe you'll like it a little more.
It's a lot of music too, right, Ben? Wow.
It's a lot of music. So this was the most, I mean, that's, I guess if there's anything else to add, it's that this was without a doubt the biggest in terms of the scope, the scale, the amount of minutes. It's almost 100 minutes of score.
Oh, shit.
And
okay.
That's way too long to put on even the most ambitious record. So the album is sort of, a lean 58 minutes or something, it's a crazy thing to cut about 30 or 40 minutes of music out of something and still have an hour-long record.
Yeah.
That's a testament to how much music it really took for us to kind of pull this off.
Is there any chance of getting an extended version in the future with everything?
Well, future's a wild place.
Okay.
Who knows?
Okay.
I guess supply and demand. Let us know out there. Do you want more? Because there's more.
Click that like button, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Yeah. Make your demands known. How about getting this album on vinyl? Is that a possibility?
Well, since the world will find out, I think tomorrow, that's happening, I guess it's okay to say here that's happening. And maybe you guys already know that Mondo is issuing a special edition double vinyl with custom artwork, and we're very excited about it.
Hell yes, that's going to be beautiful. I'm excited about that.
Me too. They do great work. We were fortunate to have both the Ritual and the Night House with special Mondo releases, and we love everything those guys do. Very
cool. David, anything to add before we part ways for our 10th time this month?
It's great. Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for this. It's great to share the screen with Mr. Lovett, and I hope people enjoy. So I'm gonna sit down and dive into the album here this week and give it a straight listen, and I can't wait.
That's gonna be my weekend listen for sure.
Yeah, get on some.
Yeah, I was listening to some of the tracks earlier today, and I'm like, it put me in a weird space, but I enjoyed it.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that.
Imagine living in that weird space for 9 months straight.
I don't know about that. You're yeah. Much respect. Ben, did we show you this? I know we showed David and Jamie Have you gotten
I've
to see
seen
it?
shots of it only online, and I can't wait to get my hands on it. I want to eat
And
it.
I'm still not technically showing you in person, but this is like more in person, I guess.
It's moving around. Yeah, it's more exciting. It's moving.
Okay. Oh, it's a moving images, moving
It's a
pictures.
moving image.
Hey.
I'm excited. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. I mean, like, we
All right.
really appreciate it. I mean, that's like, we're in the cover of Fangoria. It's badass, you know. This
Well, you
whole
guys
thing
are
just keeps getting
badass,
better.
so.
We have our moments.
Well, this is definitely a badass moment, so thank you guys.
Cheers.
All right. October 7th, all the Hellraiser things. All right. Thank you guys so much.